15, that's the number on the fear and greed index right now. Why is that so important to focus on? Well, that's because 15 is the lowest point since going back to the April lows that marked the local bottom on Bitcoin and on the crypto market before we ran up into the summertime. I'm not saying that we are bottomed here, but one thing that I am focused on is the reaction after we just hit this low point in the fear and greed or on the fear and greed index. Looking at our crypto market cap, the actual chart for this, it does feel very similar back to the sell-off because of how deep the sell-off has been, number one. Number two, the sentiment as well. The thing that I am looking at the most though with this is the oversold territory of the market. How oversold are we? Well, just looking at the crypto relative strength index, aka the RSI, we are seeing that majority of this market in terms of like the top tier projects. I know that, if we're looking at this like on the 7-day span or even on like the 24-hour span, most of this market is in the oversold territory, most of them being, top tier projects as well. You can look at this in terms of like market cap exceeding a certain amount. Like, for example, if we look at it, being higher than like 100 million, we could see that this is at like 41 in terms of the oversold territory, and then also above 1 billion. Most of the space is still extremely oversold. In my opinion, when we think about most old coins, I feel as if that most old coins have been oversold since going all the way back to like roughly January. Because I've said this even when I talk about H-bar, most of these old coin charts haven't made a new high since going all the way back to January. So we're about like 10 months into some of these old coins, selling off only. I mean, just for reference, right, XLM. XLM, if we're looking at this, XLM has not made a new high. Let me just go look at the weekly. It has not made a new high since going all the way back to November 18th. So we're talking about a whole year ago. So again, most of these old coins have been extremely boring. They've been consolidating. They've been oversold. And this is where I am looking at the fear and greed index, and I can't help but to be bullish at this moment. Now, on top of this, let's take a quick look at a few things because we just witnessed the markets plunge yet again. And it's not just crypto, by the way, that hit a low. I'll talk about this post here in a second, but we have markets plunge into extreme fear as stocks and crypto are raised trillions on November 18th. On November 18th, the CNN Fear and Greed Index for stocks fell to 9, its lowest since April, while this crypto Fear and Greed Index dropped to 11, erasing Bitcoin's 2025 gains. The S&P 500 declined 1.2% to 6,780, wiping out $1.3 trillion in value due to sticky inflation data, tech sector rotations, and China's economic slowdown. Cryptocurrencies lost $1.2 trillion in market cap, with Bitcoin falling below $90K amid profit-taking and diminished expectations for Federal Reserve rate cuts. Now looking at this post from the Kabisi letter, this is the update on the fact that fear and greed hit 9, the lowest level since April 11th for the stock market. Extreme fear and sentiment last seen at the April 2025 bottom. Yet the S&P 500 is down -4% from its record high and up 37% since the April low. This is simply not what you see before a market crash. And no, it's not. Problem is that people have PTSD when we see a major sell-off or a significant correction. And yes, believe it or not, I do think that this is a correction. On Bitcoin, I talked about a fair value gap on the weekly. What was that fair value gap, you ask? Well, good question. Here it is. This is the fair value gap that I was looking at on Bitcoin getting filled. We filled majority of it. We hit 89.3K. This is a very good push to the downside. And so far, have we seen like a big reaction off of these lows? I mean, listen, it's a decent reaction, but it's nothing too crazy. We cannot get ahead of ourselves here. The main thing that I'm looking at now with Bitcoin, if we bottomed, again, I'm not dead set on us being fully bottomed out here. We can definitely wick back down to like, mid 80 kid region. The main thing for me personally on what I want to see out of Bitcoin is I want to see us reclaim the highs. Going all the way back to November and December, aka 104K, 104.4K to be exact. After that, we still have a lot of work to do because there's still resistance right around roughly 109.2K. And then all of our major significant resistance is up here at about roughly 120K for Bitcoin. So again, we need a lot more out of Bitcoin here. We need a significant push and momentum to really pick up around Bitcoin before we even start to say, oh, hey, we bottomed out. But I do think that with how the market is currently looking and how sentiment is looking, yeah, this is typically not what you see when you are, looking at the market and expecting a market crash. Typically, you see the fear and greed still being at greed levels or even extreme greed, not extreme fear. Now to build on top of that, we do have over here, we are in a mere stock market correction. This is from Adam Kabisi, the founder of Kabisi Letter. The S&P 500 is down -4% from its record high, and sentiment is as if the Meg 7 is going bankrupt. Why is this the case? Because we are in the midst of a technological revolution. Change is always met with resistance. In reality, the S&P 500 averages 4 pullbacks of -5% or more per year. This is a healthy technical correction before we set up for the S&P 500 to $7,000. Zoom out, use fear to acquire high-quality names at a discount and ignore the noise. Nvidia's earnings are on deck, and you know if you guys really focus on that, then hey, can focus on it. But the main thing is, yeah, corrections happen all the time. Like, I don't know why people are so shocked by the fact that, so far in 2025, we have had 2 major corrections on Bitcoin. Let's go back to 2021. I know that this doesn't seem like we had a lot of corrections back here. However, if we go and look at the weekly, and we go back to 2021, okay, here we have a correction. Here we have a correction. Here we have another correction. Here we have another correction, followed by a much deeper correction. And then we had a jump correction, all-time high. So we had multiple pullbacks here in 2020. What about the prior cycle? Well, if we're looking at 2017, 2018, again, we have a correction, another correction. I mean, this is normal price action, where we have multiple corrections to support much higher price action. So right now, if we're thinking about it logically so far in 2025, we've had 2 significant corrections that have always been met with people saying that's it, it's over, we're never coming back, it's done, wrap it up, bear markets here. And typically when we start to see that, especially even back here, like I remember the comments on the channel, I remember the comments on X during this time, that's it, the bear markets here were topped out, this is the worst cycle ever, blah blah blah. All of a sudden we start to rebound, and we make a new high on Bitcoin. Most altcoins didn't follow, obviously, but that's because Bitcoin dominance was so high. I do suspect on this next run we should start to see a much different view when it comes back to altcoins. Now to build on top of that, we did get an announcement that President Trump said that $2,000 tariff dividend will be sent to Americans by mid-2026. Because again, what's happened? Like, where's the liquidity going to come from to support markets returning? Well, on top of this, we also got breaking. Japan is considering spending $110 billion on a new stimulus package as the Japanese yen falls to a near 35-year low. Own assets are be left behind. Now to build on top of this, said remind me again what market absolutely loves when the fiat floodgates reopen and fiat currency gets devalued even more. It's crypto. Crypto eats liquidity. Over here we have the current situation. The US is preparing $2,000 stimulus checks. Japan is preparing a $110 billion stimulus package. China has approved a $1.4 trillion stimulus package. The Fed is officially ending QT on December 1st. The US is issuing $1.9 trillion in treasury or in treasures per year. Canada is restarting its quantitative easing program. Global MEN 2 supply is at a record $137 trillion. Global rate cuts are at 320 plus over the last 24 months. In what world is another wave of inflation not on its way? And this might sound bearish, but for crypto and for assets that are deflationary, this is where we see the prices of those assets go crazy. This is why I'm not fazed at what's happening currently in this market. I do not care if someone is thinking, oh, guess what? Crypto's, in a bear market, this, that, whatever. Listen, if you think that crypto is in a bear market, then hey, that's on you. But I am still holding strong. I'm not fazed by this recent price action because I'm looking at liquidity easing in a